Spike in anti-Semitism we're experiencing right now in America began after the worst instance of violence committed against Jewish people since the Holocaust.
Back in 2023, New York Senator Chuck Schumer made a passionate and personal speech from the Senate floor condemning anti-Semitism, and that is the topic of his new book called Anti-Semitism in America, A Warning. In it, he writes, the rise of anti-Semitism is a, quote, five-alarm fire that threatens American democracy. And Senator Schumer joins us now. Senator, thank you very much for being here.
Great to be with you all.
Wouldn't want to be looking out your window when I woke up this morning, right? You've got protesters out there. It's been a difficult few days. We're going to get to that. We're also going to get to the book. But I want to talk about what's going on in the Middle East, because overnight, the ceasefire that had held and that you had celebrated between Israel and Hamas has been broken.
Right.
Your reaction to that, and do you think a ceasefire could get back on the table, could be reestablished?
They were really close, and this ceasefire, the second round of the ceasefire is important because first it says Hamas, which I believe has been a large cause of the trouble, would disarm and Israel would remove its soldiers from Gaza. So they were close. It fell apart. I don't know the exact details. It happened overnight, but I think our government has to work really hard to bring them back to the table and get those hostages home. And I think it's possible because they were close at one point.
Now, last week, you and 9 other Democrats helped avert a government shutdown by voting for a Republican-written bill, which many Democrats have been angered by, and we've seen it described as a civil war, as a train wreck. Many Democrats believe, if you have a government shutdown, that will force President Trump and Republicans to the negotiating table. Why not use your vote to push back?
Because the idea that they would go to the negotiating table is they don't do it. This is a new group. This is not the old group. Let me explain. I knew when I took this vote, there'd be a lot of protests, but I felt I had to do it for the future, not only of the Democratic Party, but the country. Because here's as bad as that CR bill was, and it was bad, a shutdown is 10 times worse. Let me give you what happens.
And blamed on the Democrats.
And you're right, Gail. But can I just explain
what? But you had been saying you were not going to vote. I think people were upset with you, and people were very upset with you because you had led people to believe that, no, I'm going to vote against.
Okay, well, let me explain why first the shutdown is terrible. People ought to know that. The executive branch, in this case, Musk, Doge, and this horrible guy Vogt, who have no concern for working people, would have had sole power to determine what opens and what closes. They determine what is essential. You can't go to court. So on day 2, get rid of SNAP and food for hungry kids. It's not essential. Day 4, get rid of mass transit aid. Let New York City do it. Not essential. Cut back on Medicaid and health care. Within 2 weeks, everyone would have been howling. Furthermore, it's even worse. It has no off-ramp. Guess who determines when we leave the shutdown? The Republicans. And let's not forget how bad they are. This guy Vogt, probably the most evil man. He's the guy who came up with that Project 2025.
Yes.
Yeah, he has a whole playbook of what to shut down. So they had said, one of the Republican senators who knows said to us, you'll be in the shutdown for 6 to 9 months till we totally destroy the federal government. So the shutdown was a much worse alternative. I knew I'd get a lot of flack.
But Senator,
I took some bullets
you did,
from other people.
And you're still taking bullets, but should you have let people know you're thinking ahead of time? Because really, people thought...
The problem was it came so fast. Hakeem and I had a strategy, which was to try and get a bipartisan bill, which meant in the House, the Republicans would have not been able to pass it. Only at the last minute did it happen that they all voted for it. And so Patty Murray tried to get that bipartisan bill on Wednesday. That's why I said we didn't have the votes yet. They pulled out Wednesday night, and Thursday we had 2 bad choices. But I assure the public, a shutdown would have been the greatest disaster we have to put the government in the sole hands of the evil, nasty, nihilistic people like Musk and Vogt and Trump. Would have been the greatest. We would have had half the federal government we have now. So I thought I did the thing a leader should do. Even when people don't see the danger around the curve, my job was to alert people to it, and I knew I'd get some bullets.
Senator, the leader in question, that is actually what people are debating right now. There are people in your party who don't want you to be a leader in the party anymore. And it's a question of what is this moment and what does it require? I want to ask a question about that moment involving the Venezuelan deportations and the court hearings around it. put the charges or lack of evidence or whatever
Yeah.
against these men aside for now. Let's just talk about the interaction of the Trump administration and the court.
Yes.
They seem to take the position that this court doesn't have jurisdiction over them, and you have Tom Homan saying he doesn't care what the judge thinks. What did Democrats do if and when the Trump administration defies a federal judge?
First of all, we have to have rule of law. People say, well, that's not me. If we get rid of rule of law, the 248-year tradition in America, this democracy is over, okay? So it's vital to stop it. There are two
How do
courts.
Democrats do
There
that?
are two courts. One is the court of public opinion. And the public has to make, if this happens, they have to make their voices known, Democrats, Republicans, everyone, in the strongest terms, because it's ending our democracy. Now, but we also have the courts. And so far, the lower courts have done a good job. We hope the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court will do the same job. When the lower courts, and I'm very proud that we put in all those judges last year, many of whom are making these decisions, when the lower courts thus far have said to the Trump administration, you must stop, in most cases they have.
But you
But
hear
if
the
they
Trump
don't, that's not my
administration saying
question.
you're not going to pay attention to the court.
If they don't,
Yeah.
and we go to the Supreme Court and it is defied, democracy is at real risk, and there will have to be extraordinary action taken,
Tony touched on it, Senator.
and that is by the people, by everybody.
But there are people in your own party that are saying, look, it's time for you to go. They no longer trust your leadership. They want somebody else in there. What do you say about that?
Here's what I
In
say.
your own party saying
Yes.
that's to go.
Here's what I'm saying. I'm the best leader for the Senate. We have a lot of leaders. You know, when you don't have a president, there's not one leader of the party. There are lots of them. We have a lot of good people. But I am the best at keep winning Senate seats. I've done it in 2005. Just in 2020, no one thought we'd take back the Senate. We took it. So we now
you're not
are
going
executing.
anywhere. You're not going anywhere.
We have a great. We're moving forward. Hakeem and I have a plan. Let me just say this. There's a real contrast between the parties. The Republican Party now, particularly in office, is the party of rich oligarchs who want to really screw every average American so they can get tax cuts for the rich. And we are fighting that every day. So today, we just issued a statement at 8 o'clock that describes it. Hakeem and I, we have a day of action on Medicaid. In every state, in every corner of the country, Democrats are talking about they're going to Medicaid centers. They're going to people who would be deprived and
Senator, people don't have faith in the Democrats.
Well, let me say this.
Those average Americans.
And we're going to do this day in, day out on issues. Why are they doing tariffs and raising your cost $2,000? It's beginning to work. Why are they taking away Fannie and Freddie and raising your housing costs dramatically? It's beginning to work. His numbers have come down. If we keep at it every day, relentless fighting and showing how they're hurting people so badly, Trump's numbers will get much lower, and his both popularity but also his effectiveness will decline. That, I believe that strategy will work.
May I hold it to book?
Yes.
Yeah, let's get to the
This
book.
is why you were here.
Yes.
The news that stays news, anti-Semitism.
Yeah, it's coming out at a time where you said you never thought you'd have to write this book, but you never thought anti-Semitism would be as bad as it is.
Yes.
So for many non-Jewish people, it's alarming, but it's not a real problem and not a priority. And to that you say,
Yeah, Jewish people, we carry 5,000 years of history on our back. Connor Cruz O'Brien, the great Irish poet, said anti-Semitism is a light sleeper. When things get bad, often, almost in too many societies, it turns on the Jews. You know, I was brought up between 1950, I was born in 1950. For the first 50 years, the Jewish people, we call it the Golden Medina. Jews did great in America, like everybody else. We were advancing up the ladder. There was very little anti-Semitism because the pall of the Holocaust hung over America, and people realized what could happen. But starting in 2000 with 9/11, a little worse in the financial crisis, where a lot of them accused Jewish financiers, but it got much worse in 2017. So that for the first time, Jewish Americans say, maybe it could happen here, like it happened everywhere else. So I wrote this book. I wrote this book aimed at 5 audiences, and then I'll add a 6th. First, my generation, so that they see we're not alone. My experience is often their experience. Second, to my generation's children. They know what's going on, but they didn't know the struggles of Israel, the history of anti-Semitism. You know, they know our holidays. There's a joke about the 3 words that describe every Jewish holiday. They tried to kill us. We survived. Let's eat.
Yes.
So they know better. But third is it's aimed at non-Jewish people who say, it's bad, but why are they so sensitive? You read this book, you'll see it.
Right.
Finally, I'm aiming it at my left, my people on the left, my friends on the left. I've always been a progressive, but we've always seen anti-Semitism on the right. You saw those people at 9/11, at January 6th wearing shirts that more than 6 million. But now a lot of it's trickled over to the left, and that's bad too. And finally, I hope every student and every school makes this advisory or required reading. And you know who else should read it? Donald Trump.
I'm sure you're
He has shown, let me just say this, he'd do a lot to read it because Donald Trump, let me just finish this quick point. Donald Trump has shown that he regards Jews as transactional. Oh, they're good for votes, they're good for money. He has no understanding of the Jewish people, and it leads him to do bad things. Sitting down with that anti-Semite Fuentes. When Charlottesville occurred, saying both sides are to blame. Cutting off funds to our synagogues that need protection from anti-Semitism.
Peter,
This is an important question here.
Yes.
You're doing the one hand, on the other hand, it's like
Yes.
Fiddler on the Roof here.
Yes.
One hand, and on the other hand,
Yes.
this is an important question though that a lot of people struggle with. Anti-Semitism, and then the line between anti-Semitism and criticism of Israel, its government, its actions.
Great question. To criticize Israel is not anti-Semitic. I've done it. I got a lot of flack when I criticized Netanyahu a while back.
Yes.
But when it goes over the line and you call someone an effing Zionist
Yes.
or effing Jew, how about the guy who went on the subway car and said, all Zionists get out of the subway car? Yeah. How about the head of the Brooklyn Museum, Jewish, but nothing to do with Israel, whose house was scarred in red paint? And when people say, from the river to the sea,
Yes.
that's the Hamas slogan. Hamas is genocidal. They want to get rid of all the Jews. Their charter says, is that a Jew behind a tree? Shoot him.
Yeah.
When Hamas does these things
Senator,
and says river to the sea, that is anti-Semitic.
I'm sorry, the nature of these morning shows is the commercials come very fast. We're going to go to the break here. I hope people do read it.